To walk through the streets of Madrid in the year 1600, the first step is to forget the bright, expansive metropolis we know today. You must erase the monumentality of the Gran Via, silence the incessant traffic of the Castellana, and strip away the asphalt that now covers the arid soil of the Castilian plateau. What remains is not a planned city of broad avenues, but a dense, dusty agglomeration of brick and rammed earth houses, compressed beneath an intense and unforgiving blue sky. We are in the heart of the Iberian Peninsula, more than 600 meters above sea level, where the air is thin and dry, cutting the skin like a cold blade in winter and burning like fire in summer. Upon arriving, the first physical sensation is one of blinding light. The city has no skyscrapers to block the sun. It is horizontal, punctuated only by the towers of countless churches and convents rising above irregular red-tiled rooftops. There is no refreshing sea breeze like in Lisbon, nor the dampness of Amsterdam's canals. The dominant smell is a dense mixture of dry dust, oak wood smoke used for heating, and the sharp odor of animals, mules, horses and pigs that share the streets with the most powerful nobility on earth. The silence of the surrounding plains contrasts violently with the internal noise of the town. Madrid in 1600 is a city that grew too fast, swollen by the presence of the court. The streets are narrow, winding labyrinths without sidewalks, where mud forms quickly after any rain and hardens like stone under the sun. You feel as if you are in a permanent encampment turned into masonry, a provisional place that became eternal. The atmosphere is one of urgency and improvisation. Hammers sound constantly as new houses rise to shelter bureaucrats, soldiers and adventurers arriving by the thousands, drawn like moths to the light of imperial power. Here, nature is not a garden, but a desert that begins immediately where the last house ends. The existence of a global capital at this specific point on the map defies traditional geographic logic. Unlike London or Paris, Madrid has no great navigable river connecting it to the sea and to global trade. The Manzanares River, which runs timidly and shallow below the city, is the target of constant mockery by poets of the time, who call it an Apprentice river. There is no port, no impregnable natural defenses, no exceptionally fertile agricultural lands in the immediate surroundings. Madrid exists in 1600 for one single and powerful reason: the absolute will of the king. It is an artificial capital, decreed to be the exact geometric center of the peninsula, the point from which the web of imperial bureaucracy can extend equidistantly to every corner. This political function shapes the physical landscape. The city is not a commercial entrepot, it is a gigantic administrative office and a stage for the royal court. The roads that lead here are dusty and difficult, yet they are always crowded with royal messengers, ambassadors' carriages, and mule caravans carrying the gold of the Americas unloaded in Seville. Madrid is the stomach of the empire. It does not produce, it consumes. Everything you see in the markets, the wheat, the wine, the fine textiles, had to be brought from far away, hauled up the plateau with great effort. Urban geography is dominated by the Wall of Philip II, a barrier that serves not for military defense, but for fiscal and sanitary control. Within this perimeter, the city pulses, like the brain of an organism that stretches from the Philippines to the Andes. The lack of abundant water is a chronic problem. You see public fountains crowded with people and water carriers, the Aguadores, who are essential figures, hauling ceramic jars and selling water brought from distant underground springs. The city is a geographic paradox, isolated in the middle of a dry steppe, yet politically connected to every ocean on the planet. It is a place where road dust mixes with the ink of royal decrees that change the fate of the world. Daily life in Madrid in the year 1600 is a theater of appearances and extreme contrasts, played out in narrow, noisy streets. As you walk along the Calle Mayo or through the alleys around the Plaza de San Salvador, you are surrounded by a vibrant and dangerous crowd. What immediately stands out is the obsession with clothing and status. Men move about wrapped in dark cloaks, wearing wide-brimmed hats and swords at their waists. The sword here is not merely a weapon. It is a mandatory item of dress for anyone who wishes to be somebody, and the metallic sound of scabbards striking against legs is the city's constant soundtrack. You see impoverished hidalgos, nobles of ancient lineage but empty pockets, picking their teeth in public to pretend they have just finished a lavish meal, when in fact they are starving. Beside them roll past gilded carriages of great dukes, raising clouds of dust and forcing commoners to press themselves against filthy walls. Life unfolds in the streets because the houses are small, dark, and overcrowded. The concept of Casas a la Malícia is widespread. Buildings with deceptive facades designed to evade taxes and the obligation to house officials of the court. Commerce is frenetic and omnipresent. Street vendors shout out their wares: oranges, pine nuts, olive oil, and charcoal. The smell of food is intense. On street corners, hot wine and olla podrida are sold, a heavy stew of meats and vegetables that sustains the population. Taverns are always full, places of gambling, literary debate, and sudden brawls. Women of all classes circulate through the city, from court ladies carried in enclosed litters to washerwomen heading down to the river. But beware of your pockets. Madrid is the capital of the picaros, rogues, and thieves who have turned survival into an art, taking advantage of the confusion of a city where no one truly knows their neighbor. Power in Madrid takes on a heavy, somber physical form. The Royal Alcazar, located on the western edge of the city where the land drops abruptly toward the river, this medieval fortress-turned-palace is the center of gravity of the entire system. Unlike the open, garden-filled palaces that would come centuries later, the Alcazar of 1600 is a labyrinth of towers, dark corridors, and rooms muffled by thick tapestries. It is here that King Philip III and his court reside, living under the rigid etiquette of the House of Burgundy, a body of rules that turns every gesture, every meal, and every step of the monarch into an almost religious and inaccessible ritual. But power is not confined to the palace. It spills out into the city through religion and bureaucracy. Madrid is filled with convents and monasteries, immense walled complexes that occupy entire blocks, functioning as islands of silence and spiritual influence amid the urban chaos. The sound of bells is constant, marking the rhythm of daily life. In the streets, solemn processions carrying images of saints bring traffic to a halt, reminding everyone that the Spanish monarchy is, above all else, Catholic. Another crucial space of power, still taking shape, is the Plaza Mayor, then known as the Plaza del Arrabal. In 1600, it is not yet the perfect uniform stone rectangle we know today, but a chaotic market being disciplined by architecture. It is the public stage of the monarchy. Here take place both the daily fairs and the spectacles of power. Bullfights, watched by the nobility from balconies, and the autos de fe of the Inquisition, where religious orthodoxy is publicly enforced. Power in Madrid is visual and theatrical. It must be seen in order to be feared, manifesting itself in the black velvet of courtly dress and in the austere brick and slate architecture that defines the Habsburg style. Despite being the head of the largest empire on earth, Madrid in 1600 is a city of shocking fragilities and visceral tensions. The most notorious of these is filth. The city is infamous throughout Europe for its stench and lack of sanitation. There are no sewers. When night falls, one hears the warning cry, "Agua!" shouted from windows, followed by the dumping of basins of waste directly into the street. The alleys turn into foul-smelling mud pits that pedestrians try to cross by hopping from stone to stone. This unsanitary environment makes the city fertile ground for disease, and fevers are common visitors in both palaces and hovels. Social tension is palpable. Madrid is a city of the uprooted, full of people who came seeking fortune and found only a high cost of living. The gold and silver arriving from the Americas cause runaway inflation. The price of bread fluctuates violently, and hunger is a real threat for the lower classes living in the shadow of courtly opulence. Wealth is visible but untouchable for most. This creates an atmosphere of latent criminality. The Madrid night is pitch black, there is no public lighting, and extremely dangerous. Going out without a lantern and either a bodyguard or a good sword is an invitation to robbery. There is also a moral and cultural tension. While the church preaches austerity and the Inquisition watches over behavior, the city experiences an explosion of vice, gambling, and prostitution. It is a society of contradictions, where extreme religious fervor coexists with the libertinism of clandestine brothels. The city is vulnerable not to enemy armies, which are far away, but to its own disordered density, its filth, and the economic instability of an empire that spends more than it collects. It is a colossus with feet of clay, living one day at a time, balancing between imperial glory and urban misery. When we look at Madrid in 1600, we are witnessing the gestation of the soul of the modern Spanish capital. The legacy of this period lies not only in stone, but in the city's spirit. The labyrinthine layout of the historic center, the Madrid de los Austrias, remains almost unchanged. The winding streets we walk today, filled with tourists and tapas bars, are the same alleys where Quevedo and Lope de Vega once walked, trading insults and verses. The literary quarter, where the greatest geniuses of the Golden Age lived, preserves the physical memory of that era on every corner. The transition to the modern city would involve centuries of reforms. The construction of sewers, the arrival of the Bourbons who would bring wide avenues, and the replacement of the old Alcazar, which would burn down in 1734, with the current royal palace. But the essence of Madrid is a city of encounters, of street life, and of a certain joyful rebelliousness, was born amid the filth and glory of 1600. The idea of Madrid as an open city, where no one is a foreigner because no one is really from here, has its roots in the massive migration that formed the royal court. Today, when you sit in the Plaza Mayor to have a coffee, you are occupying the same space that once served as a stage for empire. The city of red brick and slate roofs still lurks behind modern facades. Madrid has not forgotten its origins. It still carries the intensity, the noise, and the vitality of that villa y corte that emerged from nothing in the middle of the plateau to govern the world. The past of 1600 is not a dead relic. It is the vibrant foundation upon which Madrid life continues to be performed every single day. If you enjoyed this journey through time along the streets of Madrid, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which city we should reconstruct next.